The last sliver of sunset was bleeding out over the rooftops, painting the kitchen in shades of bruised orange and deep violet. It was a Tuesday. A completely, utterly, unremarkable Tuesday. The scent of garlic and rosemary from a long-finished roast chicken still hung warmly in the air, a comfortable ghost of dinner. A single plate, my father's, sat with a few forgotten bones. Mine was already rinsed and in the dishwasher. My mother was leaning against the sink, a chipped mug of chamomile tea cradled in her hands, her gaze distant, following the flight of a lone bird against the darkening sky. I was at the table, tracing the familiar grooves in the old, scarred oak, the same table where I'd done my homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays with lopsided cakes, where bad report cards had been dissected and broken hearts had been soothed. It was the heart of our home, this table. And I was about to place a brand new, wildly beating heart right in the center of it. The small, velvet box in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, a dense, secret star pulling everything in the room into its gravitational field. Every time I shifted in my chair, I felt its corner press against my thigh, a constant, thrilling, terrifying reminder of what I was about to do. I'd planned for a fancy restaurant, of course. A place with white tablecloths and sommeliers and a string quartet playing softly in the background. A place where a proposal was expected, almost routine. But that felt wrong. This, here, surrounded by the comfortable clutter of our lives, the stack of mail by the fruit bowl, my mother's reading glasses perched on the crossword puzzle, the faint, smiling smudge of my lipstick on my coffee mug from this morning, this felt profoundly, irrevocably right. "Mom," I said, and my voice came out a little rough, cracking on the simple syllable. It was enough to pull her from her reverie. She turned, her smile soft and slightly tired, the day's worries etched in the fine lines around her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart." I took a breath, the air tasting of tea and home. "Can you sit for a minute? There's something I want to ask you." A flicker of concern crossed her face. "Is everything okay? Work, is it?" David. His name, spoken in this space, sent another jolt of electricity through me. The thought of him, probably right now nervously pacing his apartment 1,000 miles away, waiting for the text, the call, the confirmation that his life was about to change, too. No, it's nothing like that. Everything's perfect. Just, please, sit." She obliged, setting her mug down with a soft clink and pulling out the chair opposite me. The same chair Dad used to sit in. She folded her hands on the table, her knuckles, a little swollen with arthritis, looking pale against the dark wood. She was waiting, her expression a mixture of curiosity and maternal vigilance. This was it. The moment stretched, elastic and infinite. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the slow, deliberate tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, the frantic thumping of my own heart. My fingers were cold and clumsy as I fumbled in my pocket. The velvet was surprisingly warm from the heat of my body. I didn't get down on one knee. That would have been too formal, too staged for this kitchen table moment. Instead, I simply placed the box between us, right next to the salt and pepper shakers shaped like little owls. Her eyes dropped to it. There was a long, suspended silence. I watched her face, a landscape I knew better than any map. I saw the initial confusion, the furrow in her brow as her brain tried to process the shape, the context. A ring box. Here. Now. With me. Then, the dawning comprehension, slow and then all at once, like a wave crashing onto the shore. Her eyes, the same shade of hazel as my own, widened. Her hand flew to her mouth, but no sound came out. I began, my throat tight. I'm going to ask David to marry me. The words hung in the air, simple, declarative, and utterly world-altering. I saw the emotions war on her face: shock, yes, a profound and total surprise that left her momentarily speechless. But it was what happened next, in the breathless silence that followed my announcement, that truly defied belief. The surprise in her eyes didn't morph into immediate, tearful joy as I'd secretly, naively hoped. It didn't harden into disapproval or worry, another fear I'd harbored. Instead, it shattered. It was as if a pane of glass behind her eyes had been struck by a stone, a web of fractures spreading instantly through her composure. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking gaunt, almost ill. Her breath hitched, a sharp, pained intake that was more a sob than a gasp. "Mom," I said, my own euphoria freezing into a block of ice in my chest. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. She just stared at the box as if it were a venomous spider, a harbinger of doom. Her hands, still folded, began to tremble. A single, silent tear escaped the corner of her eye and traced a slow, winding path down her cheek, catching the light from the overhead pendant. This was not the reaction. This was all wrong. My mind raced, scrambling for purchase. Was she upset it was David? Did she not approve? Had I misread their relationship entirely? They'd always seemed so fond of each other. I thought you liked him," I stammered, the words feeling feeble and stupid. She shook her head, a frantic, jerky motion, but it wasn't a negation of my statement. It was as if she were trying to shake loose a memory, a pain, something trapped inside. It's not David," she finally whispered, her voice raspy and broken. "David is, he's wonderful. He's perfect for you." "Then what is it?" I pleaded, my hand instinctively reaching across the table for hers. She flinched, pulling her hands back into her lap as if my touch were fire. She looked from the ring box to my face, and her expression was one of such raw, unvarnished agony that it stole the air from my lungs. It was a look I had seen only once before, at my father's funeral, a look of a foundation giving way. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of steel beneath the tremor. "I should have, a long time ago. I couldn't." With movements that were stiff, almost robotic, she pushed her chair back. The legs screeched against the tile floor, a sound that set my teeth on edge. She didn't look at me again as she walked out of the kitchen and into the hall, her footsteps echoing towards the stairs. I sat there, paralyzed, the unopened ring box a mockery between us. The happy future I had been envisioning just moments ago had vaporized, replaced by a chilling, formless dread. What could possibly be in this house, in our home, that could elicit such a reaction to a proposal of marriage? I heard the creak of the attic ladder being pulled down, a sound I associated with Christmas decorations and forgotten winter coats. The attic. A place of dust and memories. What was she doing? My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I thought about following her, but my legs felt like lead. I just stared at the doorway, waiting. The minutes stretched, each one an eternity. The happy, cozy kitchen had transformed into a chamber of suspense. The familiar had become alien and threatening. Finally, I heard her footsteps on the stairs again, slower this time, heavier. She reappeared in the doorway, and in her hands was a small, ancient-looking wooden box, about the size of a large book. I recognized it. It had always sat on the top shelf of my father's closet, a relic he'd told me contained his old army things. I was never curious enough to look. She placed it on the table with a soft thud, right beside the velvet ring box. The contrast was stark, one new, plush, promising a future, the other old, worn, whispering of secrets long buried. A fine layer of dust coated the lid, and the brass latch was tarnished almost black. She didn't open it immediately. She placed her palms flat on its lid, as if trying to absorb its history or steady herself for what was inside. "Your father," she began, her voice low and haunted, "was not my first love." The statement landed in the quiet room with the force of a physical blow. I knew my parents had married in their late 20s, which for their generation was somewhat old. I'd never given it much thought. They were just my parents. A unit. The idea of my mother having a significant history before my father was a vague, theoretical concept, not a tangible, painful reality contained in a dusty box. "His name was Thomas," she said, and the name was a sigh, a ghost released into the room. Thomas Riley. We were everything to each other. Young, stupid, and desperately in love. It was a whirlwind. We met in college, and within 6 months, we knew. We just knew. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "He proposed to me at a picnic," she continued, a faint ghost of a smile touching her lips, there and gone in an instant. No ring. Just a wild flower he'd woven into a circle. It was the most romantic thing I'd ever seen. We were going to get married after graduation. We had it all planned. A small wedding. A cross-country trip in his beat-up old convertible. A life. She fell silent, her fingers tracing the grain of the wood. I didn't dare speak, didn't dare breathe. 2 weeks before the wedding, she went on, and her voice broke, he was driving home from his bachelor party. It wasn't wild. Just a few friends at a bar. He wasn't even drunk. But it was raining. The roads were slick. A truck, it hydroplaned, crossed the center line. A sharp, sympathetic pain lanced through me. "Oh, Mom!" He was killed instantly. The words were flat, final. My world ended in a single phone call. The life we'd planned, the future we'd dreamed of, it all just vanished. Poof. Gone. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I think a part of me just died with him. I wore that stupid dried-out wildflower ring until it crumbled to dust. Tears were streaming down my face now, for her, for the young woman she was, for the loss I had never known she carried. "I eventually put myself back together," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. piece by piece. It took years. I met your father 5 years later. He was solid, kind. He was a safe harbor after a storm that had nearly drowned me. I loved him. I loved him so much, in a different way. A quieter, deeper, more enduring way. He knew about Thomas. He never pushed, he never tried to replace him. He just built a new life with me. A good life. This life. She gestured around the kitchen, at our home. He gave me you. And he was the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why? I gestured to the box, my confusion mounting. Why does this, why does my proposal bring all this back? Because, she said, her eyes locking with mine, filled with a terrifying intensity, the night Thomas proposed, the night with the wild flower, he said something to me. He was a writer, a poet at heart. He took my hands and he said, Eleanor, my love for you is so vast, it will find you in every lifetime. No matter where we are, no matter who we are, my soul will recognize yours across a crowded room, across the centuries. I will always find you. I thought it was just beautiful words. The passionate ramblings of a young man in love. My blood ran cold. She finally, slowly, lifted the lid of the wooden box. Inside, there were no army things. There was a small, yellowed bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. A black and white photograph of a handsome, laughing young man with dark, curly hair, Thomas. And nestled on top of the letters was a small, rectangular object. She picked it up and held it out to me. It was a ring box, an old, faded velvet ring box, identical in size and shape to the one I had just placed on the table. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely take it. The air in the room felt thick, charged with an impossible energy. I looked at my mother, her face a mask of ancient grief and fearful anticipation. I slowly, so slowly, lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on the crumbling satin, was a ring. It was simple, elegant. A solitaire diamond in a platinum setting. It was identical to the one in my pocket. I mean, exactly identical. The same cut, the same setting, the same delicate band. A perfect, impossible duplicate. I gasped, my head snapping up to look at my mother. How? I don't understand. I had this custom made. I worked with the jeweler for months. This is impossible. Look at the engraving, she whispered, her face pale as chalk. With shaking fingers, I lifted the old ring from its box. It felt cold, heavy with time. I tilted it towards the light, squinting at the inside of the band. In fine, elegant script, was an inscription. Through all of time. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I felt the world tilt on its axis. I fumbled for my own ring box, my fingers numb and clumsy. I pried it open, grabbed the brand new, glittering ring I had chosen for David, and held it to the light. There, etched inside the band in the exact same script, was the inscription. Through all of time. I dropped the rings as if they burned me. They clattered onto the oak table, two identical circles of platinum and diamond, one old, one new, both bearing the same impossible message. I stared at my mother, my mind reeling, unable to form a coherent thought. Coincidence, a cruel, astronomical coincidence, but the design, the engraving, it was too specific, too perfect. I never told anyone about that inscription, my mother said, her voice barely audible. Not even your father. It was too painful, too private. It was just between me and Thomas. When you put that box on the table, it was like seeing a ghost. His words. I will always find you. And then you, my daughter, bring home this ring, this exact ring, with those exact words. We both stared at the two rings lying side by side. The past and the present had collided with a force that shattered my understanding of reality. The kitchen table was no longer just a piece of furniture, it was an altar where time had folded in on itself. David. I breathed, the name feeling strange and new on my tongue. Who is he? My mother looked at me, her eyes deep wells of a sorrow so profound it seemed to span decades. I don't know, sweetheart. But when you introduced us, there was something, a feeling I couldn't place. A familiarity in his smile, a cadence in his laugh that felt like an echo from a dream I'd long forgotten. I pushed it away. I thought I was being silly, sentimental. But this. She pointed a trembling finger at the rings. This is not a coincidence. The man I loved, the man I was ready to spend my life with, was a stranger. Or perhaps, he was the least strange person in the world. Perhaps he was a soul I had known forever, who had, as promised, found me again across a crowded room, across the centuries. The proposal I thought was the beginning was perhaps merely a continuation of a story written long before I was born, a love so vast it truly did span all of time. And as I sat there in the silent, stunned kitchen, the weight of eternity pressing down on us, I realized my question wasn't just will you marry me, it was, had always been, do you remember me?